Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host Mitch, glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today we have an episode of Commander's 2 Cents. On episodes like these, I give you my own personal take on topics about the format in general and current news. This show and episodes like this one are possible because of viewers like you. So if you're looking for some easy ways to help support the show, make sure you like this episode and share it with friends. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Thank you to everyone who's already purchased our merchandise, it really does help support the channel. Another easy way to support this channel is by using our TCG Player affiliate links. So make sure that you're looking for those links in the description whenever you're buying a deck or just individual cards. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Today's episode is going to be a continuation of some previous episodes where we talk about the most powerful commanders that you can build on a budget. Part 1 talked about commanders that provide card advantage, and Part 2 talked about commanders that make the most of mana. If you haven't seen that episode, check it out here. There are many factors that make a commander powerful. I'm going to try to bucket these reasons as well as I can, so just bear with me. So the first factor that we're going to talk about today actually combines those first two factors we already discussed. Card advantage and mana advantage are very powerful things on a commander, so why not have both? Commanders that can get you ahead or cheat on mana cost on top of getting you extra card advantage are extremely powerful. So the first commander we're going to tackle today in this category is Urza, Lord High Artificer. Urza is a 1/4 human artificer that costs 2 blue. He has, when he enters the battlefield, create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token with this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. And you can tap an untapped artifact you control to add blue. Then by paying 5 and shuffling your library, you can exile the top card. Until the end of the turn, you may play that card without paying its mana cost. This is an absolutely broken and powerful commander to say the least. In terms of mana advantage, this has to be one of the most impactful when it comes down. Every single artifact that you have on the field essentially becomes a mana rock. There are plenty of zero-cost artifacts that you can throw in this deck, and they essentially become mock sapphires with this in play. Artifacts are already very easy to abuse, and this gives you even more value out of them. In terms of the card advantage that this provides, it's a bit more random but still very powerful. In terms of card advantage, Urza's activation might be random, but it can cheat on mana still. And of course, it's giving you a place to dump that massive amount of mana that you're creating. So again, in an Urza deck, expect to see a bunch of cheap artifacts on the field, even something like an Ornithopter has a place there. And then an artifact generator like Mirrored and Besiege can really come in handy as well. Essentially, whenever you cast an artifact, you get another artifact, or with an Urza deck, they're essentially just giving you an extra mana rock. And then things that can untap all your artifacts like Dramatic Reversal can come in huge as well. These can lead to some really explosive turns, getting more artifacts out there and activating Urza more and more. The amount of mana and card advantage that Urza can provide is absolutely absurd. Many consider him to be a very broken commander, and it's very hard to argue against that. Another extremely powerful commander in this category is Tulane, Teller of Tales. It's a 2/4 human druid with vigilance that costs 2 green, white, blue. It says whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card, then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. Then by paying 3 and tapping him, you can return target creature you control back to its owner's hand. So every single time you cast a creature spell, you draw and you ramp. You can draw into more lands or more creatures and just keep the engine going. It won't take very long for you to draw an incredible amount of cards and nearly play every single land in your deck. There are plenty of ways to abuse this, especially in Bant colors. There are a couple of creatures that can actually just bounce themselves back to your hand like Shrieking Drake. So essentially for just a blue mana, you're drawing a card and putting a land into play. And if that land's an island, you can do it again. This is even more broken when you add in something like Abundance. Abundance says if you would draw a card, you may instead choose land or non-land and reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a card of the chosen kind. You put that card into your hand and then put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So essentially, once you have that bounce creature like Shrieking Drake, you can just keep picking land. You can just keep casting that bounce creature to ramp further and further and further, knowing that you're always going to hit lands. And you can also run ways to double up your draw like Tatyova Benthic Druid. So when you cast that creature spell, you draw that card, and when that land comes into play, you draw another card. It's not going to take you very long to take over the game with this push commander. Whenever you see a commander that provides both card advantage and mana advantage, you know it's going to be very powerful. There are only so many commanders that really do that though. So let's move on to another factor for today with undeniable amounts of value. There are certain commanders that might not technically provide either mana or card advantage, but they do provide an incredible amount of value. This category is a bit more fluid, but stay with me here. The first value-centric commander we're going to tackle today is Gnarrk the Desecrated. Gnarrk is a 3/5 elemental horror with Death Touch and lifelink that costs 2 black, green, blue. It has, if a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So this effect is just simply a better version of Panharmonicon. It includes all permanents, not just creatures and artifacts. Doubling up on ETB triggers can get out of hand very quickly and very easily. The amount of value that this can generate from just casting one thing can be absolutely absurd. I think the direction that it's actually most broken is with lands and landfall. Anytime land comes into play, it's going to double up on that landfall trigger. One of the best things that it can double up in a landfall deck is Springbloom Druid. Because when Springbloom Druid enters the battlefield, you can sacrifice the land, and if you do, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards and put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. So first up, Gnarrk's going to double up that effect, so instead of just sacrificing one land and getting 2, you sacrifice 2 and get 4. So for each landfall trigger that you have on the field, you've got 4 lands coming into play, which are each going to double. So essentially for just casting this one card, you get 8 landfall triggers. That is an absolutely absurd amount of value. Another thing that can be very broken with this too is combos. When Shrieking Drake comes into play, it's going to untap 10 lands. With this, you can easily generate infinite mana with a bounce creature. Even something like Age of Treachery becomes a very powerful finisher with Gnarrk. When it comes into play, you're getting 2 permanents, and if you can bounce or flicker it, even better. There are plenty of powerful ETBs out there, and Gnarrk really makes the most of them. Very similar yet opposite commander is Teysa Karlov. She's a 2/4 human advisor that costs 2 white/black. She has if a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. And because that's not enough, creature tokens you control have Vigilance and Lifelink. So whereas Gnarrk deals with enter the battlefield triggers, Teysa deals with death triggers. And with an aristocrat style deck, you can get a ton of value out of those death triggers. Simple creatures like Doom Traveler are very good in this deck. In normal situations, you're getting 2 creatures for 1 mana with Doom Traveler. Now that's already a great deal, but Teysa makes that even better, giving you essentially 3 creatures for 1 mana. There are plenty of creatures out there that give you tokens when they die, and she makes them doubly as effective. There are also creatures that give you tokens when other creatures die too. She'll double up those as well, which gives you even more creatures to sacrifice for more death triggers. And then cards like Grim Haruspex can really help you dig through your deck and put you way ahead on card advantage. Because whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you're drawing 2 cards instead of 1. And of course, some drain effects like Zulaport Cutthroat come in huge for this deck as well. Because whenever Zulaport Cutthroat or another creature you control dies, each opponent is going to lose 2 life, and you gain 2 life for each creature that's dying. Once a Teysa deck is set up, it can be very hard to stop it with the amount of value it can generate. Another value-centric commander we're going to tackle today is Mem Gnarrk. Mem Gnarrk is a 4/5 wizard that costs 7. By paying 1 blue, target permanent becomes an artifact in addition to its other types, and by paying 3 and a blue, you gain control of target artifact. Mem Gnarrk can provide you a ton of value because he's just making the most out of your opponent's cards. The only thing that you need to focus on is ramping as quickly as possible and protecting Mem Gnarrk. The quicker that you ramp, the quicker you can gain control of your opponent's permanents and win the game. You honestly don't need any threats of your own. So even lesser played artifacts like Firemind Vessel can be fantastic in this deck. The more mana efficient mana rocks that you have in this deck, the better. And also ways to save on Mem Gnarrk's abilities can come in huge too. One way is with Liquid Metal Coating, which is essentially a free activation of Mem Gnarrk's first ability. And another way is Heartstone, which is going to reduce creature activation cost by 1. Again, a Mem Gnarrk deck really doesn't need threats of its own. It can generate you a ton of value by just stealing your opponent's things and putting you way ahead of them. Because of that, you can hyper-focus the rest of the deck on just ramping and protecting your commander. Another high-value commander is Edgar Markov. He's a 4/4 Vampire Knight with First Strike and Haste that costs 3 red, white, black. He has Eminence. When you cast another vampire spell, if Edgar Markov is in the command zone or on the battlefield, create a 1/1 black vampire creature token. And then whenever he attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control. Eminence is basically an effect that you get for free just for playing with this commander. Eminence in general can be a very powerful effect, but this one is especially potent. Essentially, every single time you cast a vampire, you're getting another one that comes with it. This Eminence effect is so powerful that there's an ongoing joke that Edgar never sees the battlefield. The effect is so powerful that he really doesn't have to. In no time at all, your board will be swarming with vampires and you can take over the game from there. This deck really just wants to run the cheapest vampires possible. So for example, some great 1-drops to include are Vicious Conquistador, Shadow Alley Denizen, and Indulgent Aristocrat. Vicious Conquistador is a very simple 1-drop that also drains opponents when it attacks. This might seem like a minor effect, but every little bit helps to speed up that clock. And then Shadow Alley Denizen says, whenever another black creature enters the battlefield under your control, target creature gains Intimidate until end of turn. Most of your vampires are going to be black, and the tokens that Edgar creates are black as well. So this can easily help with getting a lot of your creatures through in combat. And a card like Indulgent Aristocrat is extremely effective in this deck. He has pay 2 and sacrifice a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control. Just by sacking a few of those tokens, you can make your entire army huge. Again, the value that Edgar generates from the command zone is absurd. One final value-centric commander that we're going to tackle today is Brea Etherium Shaper. She's a 4/4 human that costs white, blue, black, red. When she enters the battlefield, you create 2 1/1 blue Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying. And by paying 2 and sacrificing 2 artifacts, you choose 1. Brea deals 3 damage to target player, target creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn, and you gain 5 life. Brea is a very flexible, efficient toolbox commander that gives you a ton of relevant abilities. She also gives you access to every single color but green, which isn't usually the best with artifacts anyways. And artifacts can be extremely synergistic and can be easily broken. In a Brea deck, running artifacts that actually want to be sacrificed gives you extra value. Implement of Combustion might not look like it does much, but when you sacrifice it, you get to draw a card. The more of these kinds of effects that you have, the more that you can dig, and the more cards that you can play like Second Sunrise. It's going to bring back all those artifacts that you sacrifice back into play. Then you can sacrifice those artifacts again, play something else that brings everything back, and just keep going. And finally, once you're set up, you can finish everyone off with something like Marionette Master. And again, Brea's abilities are very relevant. You can finish off players with damage, you can take out important creatures, or you can just gain some life to keep yourself alive. She's a very flexible, value-centric commander that gives you access to all the cards that you need for an artifact deck. But now it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what you think makes a commander powerful. And make sure that you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Links to our social media accounts can be found in the description. Also in the description below is a link to the Commander's Quarters Patreon page, and I just want to say a quick thank you to the patrons who have subscribed so far. There are many benefits to being a patron for the Commander's Quarters, including being able to vote on future commanders for deck techs. There's even a general level tier where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. I truly couldn't do this without all of your support, so from the bottom of my heart, thank you. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.